Hi everyone, welcome back. So in the previous video, we designed the header of our Instagram UI app using React Native, right? Now today, we'll be moving on to the second part, which is the story section in Instagram UI. So let's see what we'll be building today. So in the first half, we built this header section where we had two icons and the text in between. And now today, we'll be building this part over here, the stories part. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. Before we do the coding part of it, let's break down the UI once. So we have text over here, we have some images which are circular, and then there is a small border also to that images, those images, and then they are scrollable, right? You can scroll them horizontally. So we have a list here, right? This is not just static elements, they will be dynamic. In a real application, there will be n number of story items, right? So you need to be able to scroll through them. So how can we do that? We'll see. So this is where we left off our last day's class, where we had a view container called header container. Inside that we had an image and then a text and then another image, right? Okay. Now let's create another container. This will be a container for our stories, and let's give this a style value also similar to that. We'll name it story container. Now, what do we need inside a story container? We need two items. We need a text and then we need a list of circular images, right? So let's add the text first, which is the easy part. We'll just copy the text from here. Yes. And we'll just change this value to stories. So let's save this and see how it looks like. Format. So yeah, we have the text stories here. Now it is quite big. Now we need to reduce the size of it. So we have given it this, the same styling as that we gave the Instagram heading. So that is why we are getting this huge text. So let's create a new one. Small title text. We'll copy that. We'll create a new style element here, and here we will give a font value of maybe 15, let's see. Yeah, 15 seems reasonable. We'll also add some margin for this container. Now let me show you how this container would look like, the story container we defined, right? Let's add a style for the story container. Story container, border, color. We add it as red, and border width, I will add it as 2. Okay, so this is our border right now. Now we need to add some kind of padding so it aligns with this particular icon over here. Can you see this? So make sure that whenever you're designing a UI of an application, it should always be left and right aligned. The margin should always be unique. You cannot have a margin here and then a different margin over here. It should always be the same. So let's try to give the same padding as the image icon. Yeah, icons over here. Okay. So how do we do that? We just simply add a margin start value of 10 and then margin end value of 10. Save it, and yeah, now it has come inside, right? So I will remove this red color border for now, and the width also we don't need this, those just for indicators. So yeah, we have the stories title. Now what do we need? Now we need to create a list of items. So how can we show a list of items in React Native? So those who are familiar with legacy technologies like Android Studio using Kotlin, or writing applications using XML, you must be familiar with something called as recycler view, right? Where we have we can mention what needs to be recycled over and over again in a list format. So that process is pretty simple here in React Native. Let's see how we can do that. We will refer to the same documentation we were going through first time, the core components documentation, right? There is an element here, there is a component here called as flat list. Okay, you can go through all of the properties of the of this particular component. I'll just give you a quick example of how this looks like. We can have, I think we have an example here itself. Let's see if we can run this. Okay, I think we are on a queue. Let's see if we have an iOS device available. It's also on a queue. Okay, no problem. We can give copy this code and we can run it in our code and see how it looks like. I'll just copy the whole thing. Let me copy the JavaScript code then. Yeah, so we have an example right here. Okay, as you can see, this is the implementation of this particular component that we are talking about. This is all the code that you need to basically list items. Okay, so as you can see, there are 3 items here. Now, where are they defined? They are defined here. 3 items. First item, second item, third item, right? And now there is something called as flat list component which is written over here. And you can see that there are 3 properties which are used. And if you look at the properties section on the right side, there are also 2 items which are mandatory. Okay, now let's see how that works. We have a data property here, which essentially means that we are serving the data into this list. This is the data which needs to be displayed on the list item. And then there is a render item property, which basically says render each of these items individually, and I need to serve a design for that also, that render item. So we'll come back to the details of how render item works later, but for now you can keep this in mind. And then there is a key extractor, which means that from these 3 elements, if I need to identify an element quickly, uniquely, I need to supply a key. If you see the data supplied here, we have ID, title. Here ID is unique and title could be same, and we will be able to identify each of these elements individually using this ID value. So the key extractor here is ID, and now the item here is the individual item. You see there is a box and there is a text, and that is the individual item defined over here, where we pass each of these values. Now in the next video, we will be implementing flat list in our story section and see how it goes. Thank you.